Every time Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is like," people leaned in. He wasn't talking about some distant afterlife. He was showing what God's rule looks like breaking into real life. And the wild part? He didn't use grand temples or military campaigns. He pointed at seeds, yeast, treasure, pearls, things ordinary people touched every day. So let's walk through the 6 times he said it. Simple images, eternal weight. And we start with a seed so small you'd probably flick it off your table. Parable 1. The mustard seed. Jesus compared the kingdom of heaven to something ridiculously small, a mustard seed. People listening would have known exactly how tiny it was, basically a speck you could lose between your fingers. But then he added the twist. When planted, this seed grows into the largest of garden plants, big enough that birds come and make nests in its branches. On the surface, it's a gardening tip. But what he's actually saying, God's kingdom doesn't arrive with armies or headlines. It begins in ways so small you might laugh at them. Think about it. 12 ordinary disciples, not politicians or priests, carrying a message the world would eventually center its calendar on. A tiny start, an enormous finish. Here's where it stings a little. We often dismiss what looks too small, that prayer that feels weak, that habit that seems insignificant, that act of kindness no one notices. But the kingdom has this way of turning overlooked beginnings into unstoppable movements. And there's another punchline. When the plant matures, birds come from outside and settle in. Translation: the kingdom isn't a private club. It's wide enough for people you never planned on sitting beside. So what's the takeaway? Don't mock small beginnings. Trust the process of growth you can't always see. And when the branches spread wider than your comfort zone, don't panic. That's exactly how the kingdom was designed to be. And just when you think small things don't matter, Jesus doubles down. He moves from the garden to the kitchen, from seeds to dough, and shows how hidden influence works. Parable 2. The leaven. Jesus said the kingdom is like yeast. A woman hides in a huge batch of dough until the whole lump rises. Just a pinch of the stuff, but it changes everything. If you've ever baked, you know how sneaky yeast is. It doesn't roar like a lion, it just sits there bubbling, stretching, and suddenly your dough has doubled in size. That's the kingdom. No press release, no parade, just quiet takeover. And notice where Jesus points. Not the synagogue, not the palace, but a kitchen. God's work shows up in ordinary spaces, not just holy ones. The kingdom doesn't need a platform. It needs a place to spread. The lesson? Big change often starts invisibly. You may not notice God's work at first, but it keeps expanding under the surface. One habit of prayer, one word of encouragement, one choice of integrity. They work like yeast, raising the whole atmosphere of a life. And here's the kicker. Once yeast is in the dough, you can't stop it. The rise is inevitable. That's how grace works. Slowly, patiently, irresistibly. So if God's reign is working in you, expect transformation. Let it rise through your routines, through the unnoticed corners. Because the kingdom is the kind of influence you can't keep small. It always spills over. But not everyone finds the kingdom by watching it spread. Sometimes you trip right over it when you weren't even looking. Parable 3. The hidden treasure. Jesus told of a man walking through a field who stumbles on treasure. He covers it back up, races home, sells everything, and buys the field. Zero hesitation. It's basically the ancient version of finding Bitcoin at $1. He knows what he's looking at. Everything he gives up is nothing compared to what he gains. That's the kingdom. Sometimes you aren't even searching. You just bump into it through a chance conversation or a crisis. But once you've seen its worth, the only rational move is to rearrange your life around it. And notice his mood, joy. He doesn't whine about the cost. He's thrilled because he knows he's making the trade of a lifetime. Here's the uncomfortable mirror. We cling to stuff far less valuable, our status, our comfort, habits that keep us stuck. But this parable says, if you found the real treasure, stop clutching junk. Let it go. The lesson? The kingdom is worth total commitment. When God drops it in your path, don't delay, don't bargain, don't half-step. Sell out for the treasure because nothing else compares. And while some stumble on it, others spend their lives searching for the real thing. Which brings us to pearls. Parable 4. The Pearl of Great Price. Jesus tells of a merchant who spends his life hunting pearls. He knows quality, he knows the market. Then one day he stumbles on the pearl, the masterpiece. He doesn't hesitate. He sells off the whole collection just to own that one. This isn't like the treasure story where someone trips into it. This guy is a professional seeker. He's been sifting pearls his whole career. But when he finds the real deal, all the little shiny distractions suddenly look cheap. That's the kingdom. For people who are searching, it's the end of the search. The pearl outshines every philosophy, every lifestyle, every achievement. You don't need to keep shopping around once you've found the genuine thing. Think about it. We hoard pearls all the time. Career wins, status, new toys, even relationships. But deep down, none of them satisfy. The lesson here is simple. The kingdom isn't just another nice addition to your shelf. It's the one worth trading your whole shelf for. So what's the takeaway? Discernment. Know when to stop collecting and commit to what's priceless. Don't waste your life comparing knockoffs when the authentic thing is right in front of you. At the end of the day, there's one pearl that makes every other pearl look like costume jewelry. That's the one you hold on to, no matter the cost. And right after painting this picture of value, Jesus flips the coin. Because it's not just about what's worth keeping, it's also about what eventually gets thrown away. Parable 5. The Dragnet. Jesus says the kingdom is like a giant fishing net tossed into the sea. It hauls in everything: tilapia, sardines, sharks, seaweed, maybe even an old sandal. When the net's dragged to shore, the fishermen sit down, sort the good fish into baskets, and throw the rest away. That's how Jesus describes the end of the age. Everyone gets swept up, but not everyone stays. The good are gathered in, the bad get tossed. Now picture the scene. The kingdom isn't a boutique fishing trip where you pick your favorite catch. It's a dragnet, wide, messy, and full of surprises. Churches can feel like that too. You'll find saints, skeptics, hypocrites, and a few who make you wonder if they got in by mistake. But Jesus makes it clear. The final separation isn't your job, that's God's department. The lesson? Don't panic when the net feels crowded or messy. Don't waste your life trying to play bouncer at the door of grace. Your job is to be the good fish, faithful, genuine, transformed. God handles the sorting when the net finally hits the shore. And here's the kicker. Judgment may look delayed, but it isn't cancelled. The sorting always comes. So live like the one who threw the net will recognize you as worth keeping. But lest you think everything is about endings and judgment, Jesus slips in one more parable, a reminder that the kingdom also grows quietly in ways you can't track or control. Parable 6. The Growing Seed. After talking about nets full of fish and the final sort, Jesus shifts the angle. He says the kingdom is like a man scattering seed on the ground. Then what? He sleeps, wakes, lives his life. Meanwhile, the seed sprouts and grows, and here's the kicker. The farmer has no idea how. The earth produces all by itself. First the blade, then the head, then the full grain. And when it's ripe, the harvest comes. It's a picture of grace that laughs at our control issues. We love schedules, spreadsheets, 5-year plans. The farmer just plants and goes to bed. The growth doesn't depend on his micromanagement. It's mysterious, but it's guaranteed, and it's realistic too. Growth happens in stages. First the fragile blade poking through the soil, then the fuller head, then the mature grain. You can't skip steps. God's work in you doesn't leapfrog the process, and that's a comfort when you feel half-baked. So what's the lesson? Sow faithfully, then relax. Trust God with the hidden work. Don't panic if you're only at the blade stage. Harvest isn't instant, but it's coming. And when it's ripe, move. The text says, the farmer puts in the sickle at once. In other words, don't drag your feet when the opportunity matures. From tiny seeds to hidden yeast, from priceless pearls to crowded nets, every angle points to the same truth. The kingdom may start small or hidden, but it ends big, unavoidable, and decisive. So here's the sweep. The kingdom of heaven isn't theory, it's reality working under the surface of life. It starts where you least expect it, grows in ways you can't control, and asks for loyalty that costs everything, but gives more back than you could imagine. Small beginnings? Don't despise them. Hidden processes? Trust them. Ultimate sorting. Prepare for it. Priceless worth, don't hesitate. That's why Jesus kept saying the kingdom of heaven is like, because he wanted us to recognize it not in the clouds, but in the everyday. If this helped you see the kingdom a little clearer, stick around. Next, we're walking through the long arc parables, the full stories with drama, characters, and cliffhangers. You don't want to miss it.